On a cold winter day in Atlanta, Georgia, January 9th, 1957, 6 men of God got on a bus at the corner of Mitchell and Whitehall Streets and sat in the front. White passengers got off the bus, and the bus driver switched the bus's sign to special and returned the bus to the barn where buses in Atlanta were kept overnight. Hello. Something to take into consideration: Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws maintained the concept of separate but equal. So what's an example of separate but equal and the Jim Crow laws? Between the late 1800s and early to mid 1900s, if you're of color and you're at a bank, your water fountain would be separate from a white person's water fountain, as seen in the picture above. Also in the picture above, you can see the quality of each water fountain. The quality of the water fountains are different. The water fountain marked white is new and state-of-the-art looking and progressive and clean. And the water fountain marked black is old and dirty. The purpose of the Jim Crow laws were to keep people of color out of the intimacy of white spaces. We all hear the stories about blacks having to sit in the back of the bus, whites being in the front. The 4 bathrooms, the black and white bathrooms, one for black men, one for black women, one for white men, one for white women. Thankfully, all that's, for the most part, changed now. We can owe that change to people like the Honorable John Lewis, who got into good trouble. So let's talk about the Civil Rights Movement and the Montgomery bus boycott. Well, first there was segregation on the bus, blacks to the back, whites to the front. Then there was the Montgomery bus boycott. Then there was the Supreme Court case of Browder versus Gale. With this case, the Supreme Court found that the segregation of Alabama and Montgomery buses was unconstitutional. And after that, we all got along. Everywhere you run in the United States, everything was desegregated, and blacks and whites were together, everything was inclusive, and the world was happy. So I often wonder, why do they keep complaining? Let's focus on the future, man. I really wish that was true, but it's not. A common thing that we'll notice is that many cases that dealt with desegregating, of course, were taken to the Supreme Court and they'd win. However, to enforce these new beginnings was a whole nother task. For example, with Brown versus the Board of Education, and with the desegregation of public buses, strategic recipes had to be put together so that these would be smooth transitions, and oftentimes they were met with adversity. With adversity, I have to ask myself this question. With adversity back in those days, and with the opportunity now to desegregate, now that the Supreme Court is all for it, how can desegregation even be peaceful? When I think of these men of God who sat in front of that bus, I think of the movement we call love, law, and liberation. This movement was constructed by Black ministers in Atlanta to integrate the Atlanta transit system. Dr. Williams Holmes Borders was the leader of the Love, Law, and Liberation group of ministers. He was the preacher or the pastor of Wheat Street Baptist Church, and it is said that he was a big influence on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In particular, he had an influence on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s mannerisms. The Love, Law, and Liberation movement, along with Mayor Williams Hartsfield, together, they were able to come up with a way to make the entire situation peaceful. After the incident with the ministers or the men of God, the Black men of God, getting on the bus, of course, word got around. Yeah, and word got to the governor, Marvin Griffin. Marvin Griffin believed in segregation, and he just knew that maybe there would be riots or uprising, so he called for for troops to be on guard in case there was any crazy going on. The good news is that the Love, Law, and Liberation movement and the mayor of Atlanta, who was William Hartsfield at the time, set up the whole thing in a way in which it remained peaceful. Of course, the ministers had to get arrested. They had to get arrested. That's part of the process. However, it was done so cleanly. An appointment was made for them to get arrested. And they wanted to get arrested because getting arrested was the only way in which desegregation could happen, and that it would be brought up in court. And then the Supreme Court case, the Montgomery incident, will be reviewed. Crowds gathered in front of the Wheat Street Baptist Church as the cops publicly arrested the 6 ministers who sat in front of the bus. Crowds witnessed this arrest and they were terribly upset. They pushed the cop cars. Uproar almost started, but at the request of the Black and white cops who arrested them, Dr. Borders spoke to the crowd and said, "We are strengthened in the knowledge you are with us, are supporting us in this bus strike. There is, however, nothing more that you can do. We must go through with this arrest so that this injustice can be met and dealt with properly in the courts of this country by attorneys. Thank you for coming. Now please go home. Pray for our success, but right now, let us be arrested as we have planned." On the very same day, 2 years later, courts ruled in favor of the ministers. What helped the courts come to a decision? Browder versus Gale. That Supreme Court case which ruled that segregating buses in Alabama was unconstitutional. So, why am I talking about uh, desegregation of the Atlanta transit system when I live in Miami? Well, all history is for me. It doesn't matter what history is from, where it's from, it's all for us. However, there's something unique about this story. We want to know who the actual ministers were that set the tone for this desegregation of the Atlanta transit system. So I'm reading this obituary, and here are the names of all of the ministers who were involved. Of course, Dr. William Holmes was involved with Dr. Williams Holmes Borders. He was the one who led the whole thing. Dr. M.L. King Sr., I want to say that's Dr. Martin Luther King's dad, but I'm not sure specifically. Dr. E.R. Searcy, Reverend E.P. Yor, Reverend Benjamin Bickers, and the sixth person was who? Oh, it was my uncle, Reverend Benjamin Gay. The following words are directly being quoted from Reverend Benjamin Gay's obituary. His next appointment was Antioch AME Church, Decatur, Georgia, under presiding elder Dr. S.H. Rome. While at Antioch, Reverend Gay was among the group of pastors Dr. William Holmes Borders, Dr. M.L. King Sr., Dr. E.R. Searcy, Reverend E.P. Yor, Reverend Benjamin Bickers, and others who desegregated the Atlanta transit system. I am truly grateful for those in our past who paved the way for us. Again, thanks for watching.